What happens when you die? You think you know. Heaven or hell, eternal rest or eternal suffering. But what if everything you've been taught about the afterlife is not just incomplete, but dangerously wrong? What if the truth about what awaits you on the other side is something no religion, no priest, no scripture has ever dared to reveal? The information I'm about to share came from a source no church would ever accept. It came from a being who has watched humanity for thousands of years, a being who showed one ordinary man the terrifying reality of what actually happens to human souls after death. And I warn you, once you hear this, you cannot unhear it. This truth will follow you. It will make you question every funeral you've attended, every prayer you've said for the dead, every assumption you've made about your own eternal fate. If you've ever lost someone and wondered where they really went, if you've ever laid awake at night afraid of what comes after your last breath, this story will either give you peace or shake you to your core. Maybe both. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because what happened to Daniel Everett in the Nevada desert 3 years ago didn't just change his understanding of death. It revealed why we've been lied to about the afterlife for over 2,000 years. Now let me tell you how it all began. Highway 6, rural Nevada, February 14th, 11:47 p.m. Daniel Everett was driving his usual route through the desert when he first noticed something wrong with the sky. At 54, with 3 decades as an electrical lineman under his belt, Daniel had spent more nights under these stars than most people spent indoors. He knew this stretch of highway like he knew his own hands. Empty, dark, silent except for the hum of his truck engine. But tonight, something was different. He slowed the truck, squinting through the windshield. There was a light out there, not a plane, not a helicopter. Something hovering just above the ridgeline about 2 miles east, pulsing with a soft blue glow that didn't belong to anything he could explain. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, pulling onto the shoulder. Daniel killed the engine and stepped out into the freezing night air. His breath fogged in front of him as he watched the light. It wasn't moving like aircraft. It was drifting, almost floating. And then, as he watched, it began to descend. Not a controlled descent. A fall, stuttering, uneven, like something struggling to stay airborne and failing. Daniel stood frozen as the light dropped below the ridge and disappeared. A few seconds later, he saw a faint flash on the horizon, not an explosion. More like a heavy impact, followed by a dim glow that lingered. His first instinct was to get back in the truck and drive home. Whatever that was, it wasn't his business. He was just an electrician who fixed power lines, not a scientist, not military. Just a man who wanted to be left alone with his grief. Because that's what these night drives were really about. Grief. 11 months since Linda passed, and Daniel still couldn't sleep in their bed. Still couldn't sit in the living room where they had watched television together for 31 years. Still couldn't exist in that house without feeling like he was suffocating under the weight of her absence. So he drove, night after night, aimless routes through empty desert because the silence out here was different from the silence at home. Out here, the silence didn't remind him of what he had lost. Linda's death had broken something in Daniel that he didn't know how to fix. It wasn't just losing her, it was watching her die afraid. Watching the woman he loved more than anything slip away while asking questions he couldn't answer. "Where am I going, Danny?" she had whispered in those final days, her eyes clouded with fear. What happens next? And Daniel, who had never believed in God or heaven or any of it, had nothing to offer her. No comfort, no reassurance, just silence and the terrible knowledge that he didn't believe she was going anywhere at all. Now, 11 months later, that silence had become a prison. Daniel had spent his whole life certain that death was simply the end. Lights out, nothing more. But certainty felt different when it was your wife asking what came next. Certainty felt cruel when you were holding her hand as she took her last breath. He stared at the faint glow on the horizon where the light had fallen. "Don't do it," he told himself. "Whatever's out there, it's not your problem." But his feet were already moving back to the truck. His hands were already turning the key. And before he could talk himself out of it, Daniel was driving off the highway onto a dirt road that led toward the ridge. He told himself he was just going to look, just going to see what had crashed out there. Maybe it was a military drone. Maybe it was some kind of experimental aircraft. There were bases out here in the Nevada desert. secret facilities that tested things regular people never heard about. But deep down, in a place Daniel didn't want to acknowledge, he knew that light wasn't military. He knew it wasn't any kind of aircraft he had ever seen. And he knew that whatever he was about to find would change everything. The drive took almost 20 minutes. The terrain was rough, and Daniel had to navigate carefully to avoid rocks and ditches that could strand him miles from the main road. His headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but scrub brush and sand, and then he saw it. Not wreckage, not debris scattered across the desert floor, something else entirely, something that made Daniel stop the truck and sit there, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to move. There was a figure lying on the ground about 50 feet ahead, humanoid in shape, but even from this distance, even in the dim glow of his headlights, Daniel could see that it wasn't human, not even close. Daniel sat in his truck for what felt like an eternity. The engine was still running. The headlights illuminated the figure on the ground, and every instinct he had screamed at him to throw the truck in reverse and get the hell out of there. The figure was lying on its side, partially curled. It was tall, maybe 6 feet, but the proportions were wrong. The limbs were too long, too thin. The head was larger than it should be, and the skin, what he could see of it, had a grayish tone that reflected the light in ways human skin didn't. It was wearing something, a suit of some kind, dark material that seemed to shimmer faintly like oil on water, and there was damage to it. Even from 50 feet away, Daniel could see tears in the fabric, areas where the material had been ripped or burned. "This isn't real," Daniel whispered to himself. "This is not happening." But it was real. He could see it right there in front of him, and as he watched, the figure moved, just slightly. A twitch of the arm, a slow turn of that oversized head. It was alive. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He should leave. He should drive back to the highway and pretend he never saw this. Call someone, the police, the military, anyone. But then the figure moved again, and this time Daniel heard something, not with his ears. Inside his head, a voice that wasn't his own. "Please." Daniel jerked back in his seat, his heart slamming against his ribs. He looked around wildly, but there was no one else out here, just him and that thing on the ground. "Please, I need help." "Jesus Christ," Daniel breathed. His hands were shaking now. The voice was clear, soft, almost gentle, but it was coming from inside his skull, and that was wrong in ways he couldn't even begin to process. "I know you're afraid, I understand, but I am injured. My suit is damaged. Without it, I cannot survive your atmosphere much longer." Daniel stared at the figure through the windshield. It had turned its head toward him now. He could see the face, sort of. Large dark eyes that reflected his headlights like mirrors. No visible nose, just 2 small slits. A mouth that was little more than a thin line. Every horror movie he had ever seen flashed through his mind. Every alien invasion story. Every warning about things that came from the sky. "Stay away from me," he said aloud, his voice cracking. "Whatever you are, just stay away." "I cannot move far. The damage is too severe. If you leave, I will die here, but I will not harm you. I could not, even if I wanted to. I am too weak." Daniel sat there, breathing hard. His mind raced through options. Drive away, call for help, wait until morning. But something in that voice, something in the way it had said please, made him hesitate. He thought about Linda, about holding her hand as she died, about the look in her eyes when she asked him what came next, and he had nothing to give her. He thought about all those nights driving through the desert, wondering if anything mattered, wondering if there was more to existence than the brief flicker of consciousness between birth and death. And now, here in front of him, was something that shouldn't exist, something impossible, something that might have answers to questions he had been too afraid to ask. "Damn it," Daniel muttered. He killed the engine but left the headlights on. Then, against every rational thought in his head, he opened the door and stepped out. The cold hit him immediately. His breath came out in thick clouds as he walked slowly toward the figure, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to see details he wished he couldn't. The being's suit was definitely damaged. There were gashes across the chest and arm, and something was leaking from them. Not blood. Something thicker, darker. The material around the tears was flickering faintly, like circuits shorting out. "Thank you for not leaving." Daniel flinched at the voice in his head. "Stop doing that. It's not natural." "It is the only way I can communicate. My species does not produce sound the way yours does. I apologize if it disturbs you." "Everything about this disturbs me." Daniel crouched down slowly, keeping distance between them. "What are you? Where did you come from?" "I am what you would call an observer. I have been monitoring your planet for a very long time. My ship experienced a malfunction. I was forced to eject, but the descent damaged my environmental suit." "Environmental suit?" Daniel repeated. "That's what's keeping you alive?" "Yes. It regulates temperature, atmosphere, pressure. Without it functioning properly, your world is hostile to my physiology. The cold alone will kill me within hours." Daniel looked at the damaged areas, the flickering, the dark substance leaking out. Part of him, the practical part that had spent 30 years fixing electrical systems, was already analyzing the problem, assessing the damage, thinking about solutions. "What do you need?" he heard himself ask. "To fix it?" The being's large eyes seemed to study him. "You would help me, even though you fear me." "I don't know what I'm doing," Daniel admitted. "I don't know why I'm still standing here, but you said please, and I—" He stopped, not sure how to finish. "You are grieving, I can sense it. A loss that has hollowed you, someone close." Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Don't do that. Don't go poking around in my head." "I am not reading your thoughts. I am reading your energy. Your pain is visible to me, like light from a dying star. It is why I called to you, why I knew you might stop." "Because I'm broken?" "Because you are open. Grief does that. It cracks the walls people build around themselves. It makes them see things they would otherwise ignore." Daniel stood there in the freezing desert, staring at an impossible creature that somehow knew his pain without him saying a word. He should be terrified. He was terrified. But underneath the fear there was something else, curiosity, and a desperate, aching hope that maybe this thing could tell him something true. "The suit," he said finally. "Tell me what's wrong with it. I fix things for a living. Maybe I can help." "The primary thermal regulator is damaged. The conduits that distribute heat through the suit have been severed. Without them, hypothermia will set in rapidly." Daniel knelt down, examining the damaged areas more closely. The technology was unlike anything he had ever seen, but wires were wires. Connections were connections. And something about the damage pattern looked familiar. "It's like a heating system," he said slowly. "The lines are cut so the heat can't circulate." "Yes, that is essentially correct. I have tools in my truck. Electrical tape, soldering iron that runs off the battery. It won't be pretty, but if I can reconnect the lines, bridge the gaps, would that work?" "It might. Temporary repair, but it could give me enough time to reach a retrieval point." Daniel stood up and walked back to his truck. He grabbed his work kit from the back seat, the same kit he used for emergency repairs on power lines. His hands had stopped shaking. He had a problem to solve now, something concrete, something he understood. When he returned, the being had shifted slightly, exposing more of the damaged suit. "If I do this," Daniel said, kneeling beside the creature, "if I help you, I need something in return. What do you want?" Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of Linda, of her fear, of his own empty certainty that death was nothing. "Answers," he said. "My wife died 11 months ago. She was scared. She didn't know what was coming. Neither did I. I've spent my whole life believing that death is the end, that there's nothing after." He paused, meeting those dark, reflective eyes. "But you've been watching us, observing. If anyone knows the truth about what happens when we die, it's something like you." The being was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it responded. "You want to know what happens to human consciousness after physical death?" "Yes, I can tell you. But I must warn you, Daniel Everett. The truth is not what your religions teach. It is not what your atheism assumes. It is something far more complex, and parts of it are terrifying." Daniel opened his toolkit. His hands were steady now, determined. "I've spent 11 months being terrified of not knowing. I think I can handle knowing." "Very well. Fix my suit, and I will show you what your species has never been allowed to understand about death, about the soul, about what truly awaits you on the other side." Daniel looked at the damaged conduits, already mapping out his approach. "Then let's get started." The work was slow and painstaking. Daniel had never seen technology like this before. The conduits inside the suit weren't wires exactly. They were more like veins, flexible tubes that carried some kind of luminescent fluid. But the principle was the same. The lines were severed. The flow was interrupted. He just needed to reconnect them. He worked in silence for the first 20 minutes, using his soldering iron to carefully seal the smaller tears, wrapping the larger gashes with electrical tape as a temporary measure. The being lay still, watching him with those enormous dark eyes, patient as stone. "This fluid," Daniel said finally, examining a damaged section, "what is it?" "Energy. Condensed into liquid form. It carries heat, yes, but also information. The suit is more than protection. It is an extension of my nervous system. Like blood. Similar, but more integrated. Your biology separates systems: circulatory, nervous, respiratory. My species evolved differently. Everything is connected." Daniel nodded, not really understanding, but accepting it. He sealed another tear and watched the fluid begin to flow again, the faint glow returning to that section of the suit. "It's working," he said. "The circulation is coming back." "Yes, I can feel it. You have skill with repair." 30 years of fixing things that break." Daniel moved to the next damaged area. Power lines mostly, but a problem is a problem. He worked for another few minutes, then stopped. His hands hovered over the suit. The question that had been burning in him since he made this deal couldn't wait any longer. "So tell me," he said quietly, "what happens when we die?" The being was silent for a moment, then its voice came, soft and clear inside Daniel's mind. "First, you must understand something fundamental. Consciousness is not produced by your brain. Your brain is a receiver, a translator. Consciousness exists independently, and the body is simply a temporary vessel it inhabits." Daniel frowned. "That sounds like the soul, religious stuff." "Your religions have fragments of truth wrapped in layers of misunderstanding. Yes, what you call the soul is real, but it is not what your churches describe. It is not a ghost waiting to be judged by an external God. It is you, the real you, the awareness that exists before birth and continues after death." "Continues how? Continues where?" "When the physical body dies, consciousness withdraws from it. The process is usually gentle, like waking from a dream. The body falls away, and you find yourself still existing, still aware, still you." Daniel's hands had stopped moving. He stared at the being, his heart beating faster. "And then what? Heaven? Hell?" "Neither. Not in the way you imagine." The being shifted slightly, and Daniel saw the repaired sections of the suit glowing more steadily now. "What happens next depends entirely on the individual consciousness, on what it believes, on what it expects, and this is where it becomes complicated. This is where the terror begins." Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold night air. "When you die, Daniel, you enter what we call the transitional realm. It is not a place exactly. It is a state of consciousness, a frequency. And in this state, your thoughts become reality, instantly." "What does that mean?" "It means that whatever you believe will happen, happens. If you believe you will see deceased loved ones, you will see them. If you believe you will face judgment, you will experience judgment. If you believe there is nothing, you will experience void." Daniel shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. Either something is true or it isn't. Either heaven exists or it doesn't." "You are thinking in physical terms. In the transitional realm, belief shapes experience. This is why your world has so many different accounts of near-death experiences. Christians see Jesus. Hindus see their gods. Atheists see darkness. Each is experiencing what they expect to experience. So it's all just imagination, just hallucination?" "No. The experiences are real. The beings encountered are real. But which reality you enter depends on the frequency of your consciousness at the moment of death. And here is the first terrifying truth." The being paused. Daniel realized he had been holding his breath. Many human souls get trapped. They create afterlife experiences based on their beliefs, and then they cannot escape them. A soul that believes in eternal punishment will experience eternal punishment. not because any god decreed it, but because the soul decreed it for itself, and it will continue until the soul realizes it has the power to choose differently. Daniel felt his stomach drop. You're saying people create their own hell and then get stuck there? Yes. For what feels like centuries, sometimes eons. Time does not function the same way in the transitional realm. A soul can suffer for what feels like 1,000 years because it believes it deserves to suffer, because it was taught that sin requires punishment, because it never learned that consciousness creates reality. But eventually they get out? Eventually, yes. All souls eventually remember their true nature, but the suffering along the way is real and completely unnecessary. This is why the truth has been hidden from your species. This is why your religions teach external judgment instead of internal creation, because souls that understand their own power cannot be controlled. Daniel sat back on his heels. His mind was spinning. He thought about every sermon he had ever heard, every warning about hellfire and damnation, every threat designed to keep people obedient. You're saying the churches lied. Not entirely lied, but distorted. The original teachers, the ones you call prophets and messiahs, they understood the truth. They tried to teach that the kingdom of heaven is within, that you create your own reality, that consciousness is eternal and free. But their teachings were twisted. External gods were invented. Judgment was placed outside the self, and humanity forgot its own power. Daniel returned to his work on the Soet, needing something to do with his hands while his mind processed this information. My wife, he said quietly, Linda, she died afraid. She thought she might not be saved. She might not have done enough. And that belief shaped her initial experience. I am sorry, Daniel. He felt tears burn his eyes. So she's suffering. Right now she's in some kind of hell she created for herself? I did not say that. I said belief shapes initial experience. But Linda was also filled with love. She loved you. She loved her life. And love is the highest frequency. It is the key that unlocks every prison consciousness can create. Daniel looked up. What do you mean? The second truth about death is this. Love transcends all. A soul full of love will not remain trapped for long, no matter what it initially believes. Love is like a beacon. It cuts through illusion. It reminds the soul of its true nature. Your wife's fear may have created a temporary darkness, but her love would have dissolved it quickly. She is not suffering, Daniel. I can tell you that with certainty. How? How can you know? Because I can see her. Daniel froze. What? Consciousness leaves traces, energy signatures. You carry Linda's imprint with you. It is woven into your own energy field, and through it, I can perceive her current state. She is not in darkness. She is in light. She is waiting. Waiting for what? For you. Eventually, but also simply existing, learning, expanding. The transitional realm is not just a holding place, it is a school, a vast, infinite school where consciousness continues to grow and evolve. Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. Relief, pain, hope. All of it mixed together until he couldn't tell one from the other. Can she see me? Does she know I'm here? She knows. Consciousness is not limited by physical distance. She's aware of your grief. She has tried to reach you, but your pain has created a wall. Your disbelief has made you deaf to her presence. I want to believe you. I want to believe all of this. But how do I know you're not just telling me what I want to hear? A fair question. Let me show you. The being raised one thin hand and touched Daniel's forehead. The touch was cool, almost electric, and suddenly, Daniel wasn't in the desert anymore. He was standing in a field of light. There was no ground exactly, just luminescence that extended in every direction. And there, 20 feet away, was Linda. She looked the way she had before the cancer, healthy, vibrant. Her hair was the rich brown it had been when they first met. Her eyes sparkled with that mischievous humor he had fallen in love with 31 years ago. Danny, she said, and her voice was real. It was her. Linda. The word came out as a sob. Linda, is that really you? It's me, sweetheart. It's really me. He tried to move toward her, but his feet wouldn't obey. You can't come closer yet, she said gently. You're still tethered to your body, but I wanted you to see. I wanted you to know that I'm okay. I'm more than okay, Danny. I'm everything I was meant to be. I miss you so much. I know, I feel it, but I'm not gone. I'm just somewhere you can't follow yet. And when you do come, when it's your time, I'll be here. We'll be together again. Were you scared at the end? Linda's expression softened. For a moment, but then I remembered love. I remembered you. And the fear dissolved like morning fog. It was so fast, Danny. One second I was afraid, and the next I was here, and everything made sense. Everything. I should have been able to help you. I should have believed in something so I could comfort you. You did comfort me. You held my hand. That was enough. Love was enough. It's always enough. She smiled, and it was the same smile she had given him on their wedding day. Now go back, sweetheart. Fix that being suit. Learn what he has to teach you, and live. Really live. Don't spend whatever time you have left drowning in grief. That's not what I want for you. I don't know how to live without you. You'll learn. And when you're ready, I'll be waiting. Time works differently here, Danny. For me, it will feel like moments. I'll barely blink and you'll be here. The field of light began to fade. Linda's face began to blur. I love you, Daniel said desperately. I love you so much. I know. I love you too. Always. And then he was back, kneeling in the frozen desert, his face wet with tears, the being watching him with something that looked almost like compassion. That was real, Daniel whispered. That was really her. Yes, a brief connection, but authentic. She is well, Daniel. She is beyond the fear that plagued her final moments. She understands now what she could not understand in physical form. Daniel wiped his face with the back of his hand. His whole body was trembling. Thank you, he said. I needed that. I needed to know. There is more. The truth about death extends far beyond what I have shown you. There is the matter of return. Return? Reincarnation. Your religions have touched on this as well. The cycle of rebirth. Consciousness returning to physical form to continue learning. Daniel looked up sharply. You're saying we come back? We live more than once? Many times. Hundreds of times for most souls. Thousands for others. Physical existence is a school, Daniel. Each life is a lesson. Each death is graduation from that particular classroom. And then consciousness chooses whether to return for another lesson or to move on to other forms of learning. Why would anyone choose to come back? If the other side is light and love, why return to this mess? Because physical existence offers something unique. Limitation, contrast, forgetting. In the transitional realm, you remember everything. You understand everything. There is no struggle. But growth requires resistance. A muscle that never strains, never strengthens. A consciousness that never forgets its true nature, never develops certain qualities that can only be forged in the fire of physical limitation. Daniel thought about this, about the struggles of his own life, the losses, the pain, but also the love, the joy, the satisfaction of a problem solved, a connection made, a moment of pure happiness. So we choose to forget? We choose to come here and suffer? You choose to come here and learn. Suffering is not the goal. It is a byproduct of forgetting. A soul that remembers its true nature, even while in physical form, does not suffer in the same way. It experiences contrast without being destroyed by it. And this is what's been hidden from us? This whole system? Parts of it. The original teachers knew. Jesus, Buddha, others. They tried to share the truth. But their teachings were corrupted, institutionalized, turned into systems of control rather than paths of liberation. And so, humanity cycles through lives, forgetting each time, suffering unnecessarily because it has been taught to look outside itself for salvation instead of within. Daniel finished the last repair on the suit. The glow was steady now, the fluid flowing smoothly through all the conduits. There, he said. That should hold for a while. Yes. I can feel the warmth returning. Thank you, Daniel. The being slowly sat up, moving carefully. Its movements were still weak, but there was more strength there now. You said the truth is terrifying, Daniel said, and some of it is. The idea of souls trapped in self-created hells, that's terrifying. But the rest of it, Linda being okay, love being the key, consciousness being eternal, that's not terrifying. That's beautiful. The terror comes from understanding responsibility. If consciousness creates reality, if belief shapes experience, then you cannot blame anyone else for your suffering. Not God, not the devil, not circumstances. You are the creator of your own experience in life and in death. That level of responsibility is terrifying to those who have been taught to be victims. Daniel stood up, his knees aching from kneeling on the frozen ground. What about the people who never learn this? The ones who die believing in hellfire and punishment? Are they just doomed to create that for themselves? Nothing is permanent. Even the most trapped soul eventually awakens. But yes, the process can be long and painful. This is why spreading truth matters. This is why the knowledge must be shared. Each person who dies understanding their own power is one less soul lost in self-created darkness. Each person who learns that love is the key is one more light in the collective consciousness. Daniel looked up at the stars, millions of them, billions, each one possibly hosting worlds like his, beings like the one he had just helped. Why tell me this? Why show me Linda? I'm nobody, just a lineman in the middle of nowhere. There are no nobodies, Daniel. Every consciousness matters. Every awakening ripples outward. You asked for answers and I gave them. What you do with them is your choice. But I sense you will not keep this to yourself. I sense you will share it in your own way with others who are ready to hear. How would I even begin? You will find the way. The truth has a gravity of its own. It attracts those who are seeking. Simply live what you now know. Let your actions reflect your understanding. The rest will unfold naturally. The being stood slowly, testing its strength. The suit glowed steadily now, fully functional. My retrieval signal is active. Others of my kind will come for me soon. But before I go, there is one more thing you must understand. What's that? The shift is coming. Humanity is approaching a threshold, a moment of collective awakening or collective destruction. The souls being born now, the consciousness incarnating on your planet. Many of them are here specifically for this time. They carry knowledge. They carry potential. And how your species navigates the coming years will determine whether it joins the larger community of awakened beings or destroys itself in fear and separation. And what am I supposed to do about that? Whatever you can, spread truth, live love, remember that death is not the end, and help others remember. The more humans who awaken to their true nature, the better your species' chances of surviving what is coming. Now, Daniel felt the weight of this settle on his shoulders. It was too big, too much. Do not carry the whole world, Daniel. You are not meant to. Simply carry your peace. Simply be the light you are capable of being. That is enough. It is always enough. In the distance, Daniel saw lights approaching, not headlights, something else, something descending from the sky. My time here is ending, but yours continues. Use it well. Will I see you again? Perhaps. Consciousness has a way of reconnecting. What we have shared tonight has created a bond that transcends physical distance. If we are meant to meet again, we will. The lights grew closer. Daniel could see a shape now, a craft of some kind, silent and luminous, descending toward them. Remember what I told you, Daniel Everett. Consciousness creates reality. Love is the highest frequency. Death is not the end, but a transition. And Linda is waiting for you in her own time, when your lessons here are complete. The being began walking toward the descending craft. Then it stopped and turned back. One more thing. The fear she felt at the end, it lasted only seconds. The love she felt has lasted eternally. Hold on to that. And then it was gone. The craft enveloped it in light and rose silently into the sky, becoming just another point of light among the stars until it disappeared entirely. Daniel stood alone in the desert, the cold biting at his exposed skin, but he didn't feel it. He felt warm. He felt full. He felt, for the first time in 11 months, like he wasn't drowning anymore. Linda was okay. She was waiting, and death wasn't the end he had feared. It was just a door. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He drove home as the sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that he had seen 1,000 times but never really noticed. Now he noticed. Now everything looked different. He walked into the house that had felt like a tomb for 11 months. Linda's photos still hung on the walls. Her books still sat on the nightstand. Her robe still hung on the bathroom door. But the weight of those objects had shifted. They weren't reminders of loss anymore. They were evidence of love, love that still existed, love that was waiting. "I'll see you again," Daniel said to the empty room, and for the first time since her death, he believed it. The first week was strange. Daniel moved through his days like a man waking from a long sleep. He went to work, he fixed power lines, he talked to coworkers, but inside, everything was reorganizing itself. Every belief he had held about life and death was being rewritten. He started paying attention to his thoughts. The being had said, consciousness creates reality. That belief shapes experience. Daniel had spent decades believing in limitation, in scarcity, in the finality of death. What else had he created without knowing it? He caught himself one morning complaining about his back pain, stopped mid-sentence, asked himself, is this the reality I want to create? He started small. Instead of thinking about what hurt, he focused on what worked. Instead of dreading the day, he looked for things to appreciate. It felt foolish at first, forced, but something began to shift. 3 weeks after the encounter, Daniel noticed his back pain had diminished, not disappeared, but softened. He slept better. The nightmares about Linda's final days stopped, and he started dreaming about her differently, not watching her die, but talking to her, laughing with her. Dreams that felt less like imagination and more like visitation. 1 month later, Daniel did something he hadn't done in over a year. He accepted a dinner invitation from his neighbor, Frank, a widower himself, who had lost his wife 5 years earlier. They sat on Frank's porch drinking beer, watching the sunset. "You seem different lately," Frank said, "less like you're drowning." Daniel nodded slowly. "I had an experience, something that changed how I see things." "What kind of experience?" Daniel hesitated. How could he explain it? An alien in the desert? A damaged suit? Visions of his dead wife in a field of light? "I can't really describe it," he said finally, "but I know now that Linda's okay. That death isn't what I thought it was, that I'll see her again." Frank was quiet for a long moment. "You find religion?" "No, something else. Something bigger than religion." Daniel took a sip of his beer. "You ever think about where Mary went after she died?" Frank's jaw tightened. "Every damn day." "What do you believe?" "I don't know anymore. Used to believe in heaven, but after watching her suffer like that, I couldn't believe in a God who would allow it, so now I just try not to think about it." Daniel understood. He had been in that same place, caught between wanting to believe and refusing to accept comfortable lies. "What if it's not about God?" Daniel said quietly. "What if it's about us? What if we're more powerful than we've been taught? What if consciousness itself continues and we shape our own experience on the other side?" Frank looked at him. "That's either the most hopeful thing I've ever heard, or you've completely lost it." "Maybe both." Daniel smiled. "But I'll tell you this, I'm not afraid anymore. Not of dying, not of living. And for the first time since Linda passed, I feel like there's a reason to keep going." 2 months after the encounter, Daniel started writing, not for anyone else, just for himself, recording everything the being had told him, everything he had experienced, the truths about consciousness, about death, about love being the highest frequency, about souls creating their own afterlife experiences. He filled notebook after notebook, and somewhere along the way, the writing became something more. It became a mission. He started talking to people, carefully at first, testing the waters. When coworkers mentioned losing loved ones, Daniel would listen, really listen, and then, if it felt right, he would share a piece of what he had learned. "What if they're not really gone?" he would say. "What if consciousness continues? What if love is the bridge between here and there?" Some people dismissed him. Some people argued, but some people, the ones who were ready, leaned in. They asked questions. They wanted more. And Daniel shared what he could. 6 months after that night in the desert, Daniel visited Linda's grave for the first time since the funeral. He stood there, looking at the headstone with her name carved into it, the dates that marked her physical existence, but he knew now that those dates meant nothing. They marked the span of one lifetime, one classroom, one lesson in an eternal journey of learning. "I'm not going to come here anymore," he said aloud. "You're not here anyway. You're somewhere I can't see yet, but I know you're there, and I know I'll find you again." He placed his hand on the cold stone. "Thank you for loving me. Thank you for teaching me that love is enough. It really is enough." He turned and walked back to his truck. The grief wasn't gone. He didn't think it would ever be completely gone, but it had transformed. It was no longer a weight crushing him. It was a thread connecting him to something greater, a reminder that consciousness didn't end, that love didn't end, that nothing real ever truly ended. Daniel Everett was 54 years old. He had maybe 30 years left if he was lucky, and he was going to use every single one of them, not drowning in grief, not waiting for death, but living, really living, sharing what he had learned with anyone ready to hear it, being a light in a world that had forgotten its own power, because that's what Linda would want. That's what the being had asked of him, and that's what his own awakened consciousness was demanding. The truth about death had terrified him at first, the idea that souls could trap themselves in self-created hells, the weight of knowing that consciousness created reality, and no one else could be blamed for suffering. But the terror had given way to something else: liberation, power, purpose. He wasn't nobody. There were no nobodies. Every consciousness mattered. Every awakening rippled outward. And Daniel was awake now. Finally, fully awake. Daniel Everett's encounter in the Nevada desert revealed something that changes everything we think we know about death. Consciousness doesn't end. It transitions. And what you believe, what you expect, what you hold in your heart at the moment of death shapes the reality you experience on the other side. This is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means you are responsible. No external God decides your fate. You do. Your beliefs do. Your frequency does. And liberating because it means you have power. You are not a helpless soul waiting to be judged. You are a creator. You always have been. The religions told you to look outside yourself for salvation. They taught you fear so they could control you. But the truth was always simpler. Love is the highest frequency. Love dissolves fear. Love unlocks every prison consciousness can create for itself, and love never ends. If you have lost someone, know this: they are not gone. Consciousness cannot be destroyed. It can only transform. And if they loved you, if you loved them, that connection still exists. It will exist forever. Death is not a wall, it is a door. And one day, you will walk through it and find everyone you have ever loved waiting on the other side. So I ask you, what do you believe about death? Has this story changed anything for you? Have you had experiences that suggested consciousness continues beyond the body? Share in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you want more stories like this one, stories that reveal truths hidden for centuries, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because what Daniel learned in that desert is just the beginning. There is so much more to uncover. Death is not the end. It never was. And once you understand that, everything changes.